What's up, YouTube? Welcome into another edition of College Football Roundup. And you see the title. We're going to be talking about the Ed Orgeron situation down in Baton Rouge. And we know that obviously things have gotten dire in the past couple of weeks. If any of you guys follow the main radio station down there, it's ESPN 104.5 Baton Rouge. And I'm not just trying to sit here and take their points, but there's been a lot of stuff that has come out, and those guys are really plugged into the program. If you listen to them, you can tell that their attitudes have drastically changed. They're guys that expected that Scott Woodward, LSU's athletic director, would stick to his guns like he has during his tenure at Washington and as well at Texas A&M. And even with the hiring of Kim Mulkey, they waited for LSU's women's basketball coach to accept her contract in the WNBA, and then hired her in. Point is, he likes to let head coaches, regardless of the situation, finish out the season, usually. But with the comments that were just made on Ed Orgeron's radio show last night with the prank caller calling in, for those of you who don't know, you probably do if you're watching this video, but if you don't, a prank caller called in to Ed Orgeron's radio show and said, hey, I've got my sister there, she's 20 years old, it's her birthday, and Ed was like, oh, where she's at, what's her name? And he goes, oh, it's Bebe, just like what he was called right when he was growing up. And then of course at the end of the call, the guy goes, hey, well, she's 20 years old and blonde, make sure you don't have sex with her. So that was where the whole thing started, and Ed Orgeron's response was, hey man, we have a special water hole down in the bayou for people like you. And it was fishing hole, not watering hole. And as someone who has parents who grew up in South Louisiana, this isn't the first time I've heard somebody say this, right? But at the same time, as the head coach of LSU on this like national radio program, basically, I know it's technically local and it's not broadcast anywhere else, but they broadcast it online. So anybody can go and listen to this. Literally anybody. You go to lsusports.com, you can be living in any state, you can be living in the UK and listen to it. So this can be heard everywhere. It's public, right? And you just can't do that. You just can't do that if you're the head of, a college football program like LSU. You just can't. And with the way that Scott Woodward, it seems like he's kind of raised the standard coming in, you just really wonder how long he's going to last. And with that comment, with the way that things are going on, with all of the other apparent internal turmoil that, is kind of seeping through the cracks right now if you follow LSU media, but it's not really breaking to like big articles other than like the Yahoo Sports article that Pete Thamel wrote. Point is, there is a toxic culture at LSU, and it seems, and unfortunately, it seems like it's because of Ed Orgeron. It just seems like he's reverted to Ole Miss. It's the same thing. He's kind of freaking out because his back's against the wall. Things aren't going his way. He doesn't know how to fix it. He thought he knew how to fix it. He thought Joe Brady could fix it. But then you don't have an offensive line. You boast in the preseason about how the offensive line is going to be one of the strengths of this football team. And then it's the very axis or one thing that you can point to that maybe if the offensive line was good, this team may not beat Bama, it may not be a championship contender, but it'll be a New Year's 6 team, which is what the LSU standard is, right? If it's not the bubble, if it's not the college football playoff, it's a New Year's 6. That's ideal. 10 wins. 10 wins is the mark for LSU. Double-digit wins every year. That's the type of program that we feel like we are. And when you look at the recruiting rankings, if that's the type of program that we should be. Obviously, recruiting rankings, there are some dudes who fall through the cracks. Iowa State is an example of a program that, finds those 3 stars and wins with them, right? And competes for championships with them. So I'm not trying to, crap on that, but that's a whole nother conversation. Getting back to Ed Orgeron. Okay, so the main thing for me as a watcher that I kind of noticed that kind of opened my mind to, okay, what's happening, right? Last year, a lot of people gave Ed Orgeron a pass. It's like, okay, you lost everything. It's a COVID year, whatever, right? Only SEC schedule. You go 5-5. All your quarterbacks get hurt. Throw it out the window, right? Quarterback gets hurt again, but it's like it was just the other half of the quarterback competition, which was perceived as very close by the general public. So it didn't really matter. Like, yes, obviously we miss Miles, and maybe things are a little bit different if he plays. Who knows? But we can't say for sure, definitively yes or no, because that never happened, right? But what we do know is that the LSU fan base was confident regardless of who won. So you have your quarterback that the fan base trusts. And then we see what's happening with the offensive play calling, the offensive line, obviously, the run game because of the offensive line, and also the fact of the people that they're playing. And then there's also news, apparently, Matt Moscona is who I'm quoting here, that Jake Peetz is not taking well to Steve Emsinger coming back and trying to like consult him. So there's a lot of issues going on right now. The only thing that seems like it's actually a positive is the defense and Durante Jones, right? But the problem is those dudes play so hard for 3 quarters and the offense doesn't put the game away from them that they get tired in the fourth and then teams come back or almost come back. And once again, this is all on the offense, but it's not even on the offense. It's not even on Max Johnson or the running backs or the receivers. It's just on the offensive line. But it's not even on coaching. We just got a brand new coach. Obviously, James Craig just got ousted. He's got a lawsuit, and maybe his coaching was not, up to par. But this comes down to recruiting at the end of the day. If the kids suck, and I don't mean to say that all of them suck, right? Like Ed Ingram and Austin Deculus won a national championship for us. Appreciate them, right? But and Chasen Hines has showed some good spots. It's not these dudes' fault that they're in this situation. It's just not Anthony Bradford's fault that he's having to play left tackle when he was recruited as a center. This is poor recruiting. If you don't have the talent, who does that fall on? That falls on you not finding offensive linemen on the recruiting trail. But everybody else can. Georgia can find it. Bama can find it. Some of the people Bama finds are in your own state. Cam Robinson, remember him? He's out of West Monroe High School, Louisiana. So hopefully Brad Davis can help, but it's we probably know Ed's gone. I mean, if he's going to lose to Auburn, he's going to lose to some other teams. LSU's not running the table for the rest of the year. It's just not happening. And they're probably going to go lose to Kentucky because they have an actual offensive line. The trenches are an important part of the game. These skill guys that you have, like Deion Smith, who showed out game 1, right? Keyshawn Butte, obviously one of the most talented receivers in college football, if not the most talented receiver in college football, right? Brian Thomas Jr., 4-star, 5-star recruit. The list goes on and on with the dudes that they have out there, but they don't have an opportunity because Max is scrambling in the pocket. He doesn't have barely enough time to process, right? A lot of the times the play is coming in and then they want to change the coverage, but the play clock's winding down. So he's having to decide all of that. And then on top of that, when he gets the ball, most of the time he's pressured. And so you just have to eliminate the run at all. And then that causes other teams to just rush 2 or 3 people and they're still getting pressure. How it's what are these kids supposed to do? They can't do anything. I mean, you even saw it in the press conference. Max Johnson was literally I wish we would just stick with the play so we wouldn't have any problems. What is going on here? Your quarterback is literally criticizing the offensive coordinator, saying that he's too slow getting the play in. Where did you go in 2 years? That wasn't even an issue last year. It was just the defense. And then Emsminger retired, respectfully. He's won us a national title, right? It's just... And it's no way, I know I brushed it off even. I'll admit it, even though it's not on record here or anything, but I brushed it off going into the season. I was Joe Brady, Jake Peetz, dude coached Christian McCaffrey in his breakout year. DJ Mangus was on the 2019 staff. The offense is going to be fine. It was fine last year. No, dude, this guy's a first-time play caller. He's learning how to do it, in the moment this year. And so, Durante Jones has worked out a lot better for Ed Orgeron, but still, it's how was I in the offseason just writing this off? I think it was because it was the exact opposite of, the older, football coach, and it was okay, I think that, there were all the culture things that we heard about last year, especially like with the internal dynamics and the relationship building. You saw when Bo Pelini was yelling at them on the sideline that they didn't care. They didn't have any response. You could just tell by the body language, right? And I know that that's subjective, but everybody who watched that last year knows that that's what's happening. You could look at the TV, you could see it and be like, dude, these dudes don't care. Like, and I'm not even mad at him. It's like, how is Bo Pelini going to relate to them? I don't know why my brightness just went down. I've been talking. But anyways, going back to just this whole thing, all I can do is sigh. Because it's like you get one thing right and then the other part wrong. And that's in reference to defense offense. But then once again, this is what I was trying to get to earlier. These dudes have no experience. Like, you're going to bet your job. Like, I'm sure maybe Ed thought he had another mulligan, or he just thought that it didn't even matter because it was LSU. I don't know. But he put his faith at the end of the day in two coordinators who've never, well, except for Durante Jones at an HBCU in 2009. And that's no disrespect to HBCU. That's just letting people know that, like, hey, it's a division. He was a D3 coordinator. There's a very big difference between that and the SEC, right? And why were people like me expecting that it was just going to go smoothly? Like, it was going to take at least 2 years for everybody to get settled. But I guess we just thought with LSU's talent that, working out the kinks with these guys will result in 9-3 at worst. Or, or not even maybe that's at worst, but maybe that was the best case. I don't know. Man, it is interesting times in Baton Rouge. But I guess the good news, the silver lining with all of this, is that Ed Orgeron's the problem. You think? We'll see. We'll see what happens next year, right? I'm not holding my breath after these past 2 years. But it seems like he's the issue. Whether when Joe Burrow and Dave Aranda have not been, and Steve Emsinger, because he was the coordinator in 2018 too, like those, Steve Emsinger, Dave Aranda, Joe Burrow, that's the only time that Orgeron has ever been a championship, a double-digit win level coach. The rest of his career, he's been mediocre. I mean, if you go look at his record at Ole Miss, you can see it there. And then here it's like, okay, just above 500 with LSU. Like, with LSU's talent, dude. Like, other than the offensive line, I'll give him that. But that's a failure on his part in recruiting because that was his recruiting class. So you'll see what happens. In regards to the offensive line, I'll say one more thing. It seems like we've got some pretty good recruits coming in, but it's like, I don't know how much I trust those recruits. I will say, I think Bo Bordelon is his name. I don't know if he is the top of his class, and he may be from Newman. And I trust that just because I've watched Arch Manning highlights. I'm like, okay, if this dude's blocking for Arch Manning, I think he's going to be all right. We'll have to see, though. Who knows? Like I said, I mean, could have probably maybe not said that with all the other guys they recruited because they're not from Newman, but probably would have thought those would have been great players too. And then I believe Will something else is another one, but they look like pretty, they're Louisiana boys and they're tackles and they want to play for LSU. So I think they're going to play hard. And I think that all of this is going to be very interesting to see who stays on staff. I think there is a very high chance that Brad Davis stays on staff. When it comes to the new hires this year. So I'm not talking Mickey Joseph, Corey Raymond, like those guys have been here forever, right? I mean, who knows, though, at this point. But I think Brad Davis, out of the new hires, because he got brought in, like, at the beginning of this year. He didn't recruit any of these guys. He's just trying to coach them. And he's a Baton Rouge native, just like Scott Woodward and, a lot of these other guys. Even if they're not Baton Rouge natives, they're Louisiana guys. But we know that Brad Davis for sure is. So hopefully his recruiting skills can be better. I'd like to see what he would say about those guys, but ideally, maybe he'll fix that, but who knows? Maybe Ed Orgeron is just like, I'm going to get all these, I'm going to find a way to pick, like, the worst 4 stars out there. So, I don't know. Most 4 stars work out decently, but these ones didn't this past year. So, the offensive line is the bane of LSU's existence. Comes from Ed Orgeron not being able to recruit as a head coach, and the guy who was recruiting in the past is now in a lawsuit with the university. So there's that. And I think that Joe Burrow, just kind of fixes a lot of your problems. Yeah, and so does having a non-first year offensive coordinator. And maybe when you mix the young and the old, like Steve Emsinger and Brady, you get the perfect combo. You don't have to just go one way or the other. But I'm just a talking head on YouTube and a 21-year-old kid in my senior year of college that is trying to analyze football the best I can from my couch. So at the end of the day, these dudes are all better than me. They have more experience in football. And when I say better, I mean like better on the field. And I know I didn't really criticize the players, but these dudes also just, they're better coaches than me too. Even though I'm criticizing Ed Orgeron, like he'll be a better football coach than I ever will, even though this is going bad, right? Just because based off experience. So anyways, y'all, that's going to wrap up this episode of College Football Roundup. If you like me and my LSU rants where I go off topic, I go all over the place, and then I rein myself back in, come back again, and we will see you guys in the next video. Go Tigers. We'll see what happens. Hopefully Nick Saban's our head coach. Probably not, and he's never coming back, but I think that Luke Fickell might, and he's going to win us a national championship. See y'all.